evening, and thank you for tuning in to the FOCO Sports Show. I am your host, Tim McCall, and I am joined tonight by colleagues from the Rocky Mountain Student Media. Before we get started, you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Grace Reeder, and I produce this show.
Oh,
yeah.
You're pretty cool.
Yeah.
She's the best.
I'm Nick Baker, and I'm from KCSU.
I'm Brad Buck, also from KCSU.
I'm Eddie Harris with the Rocky Mountain Collegian.
All right, so to start off our show tonight, the CSU Rams football fell to the Boise State Broncos Saturday in what was a heartbreaking overtime loss. We're going to go ahead and break it down a little bit. What do you guys think going forward this means for the CSU Rams football team?
Defense. This was just a defensive fail all the way around. Aside from Nick Stevens throwing a couple passes that should have been interceptions but weren't because of Boise drops, or coming back because of a roughing the passer call that probably wasn't necessarily, I think that there's not a lot else that the offense can do. But the defense blew not one, but two 25-point leads.
I'm going to have to disagree with you
disagree.
right off the bat there. Michael Gallup, for the second game in a row, didn't catch a pass in the second half. He did have a PI call against him. There's a lot more the offense can do in terms of how they manage a game. You also saw Dalen Dawkins not participate in the last half of the fourth quarter or overtime because he came off with an injury. That injury has not yet been disclosed exactly. I think it was just fatigue. I saw him come off on his 32nd carry, and it looked like he just had weight on his back, like his body physically just couldn't run the football anymore.
Under 40 degrees too, and he's not used to the workload anyway, and it was already cold.
Yeah, if you know that Dawkins is going to get 30 touches, he got 36 total touches if you include his 4 receptions. You have to plan on putting Rashad Body in there earlier, getting Dalen, keeping him fresh so that he can be prepared for the fourth quarter.
It is interesting to me, though, because he is used to the weather. I mean, he's an experienced player. I think Bobo mentioned after the game that the trainer said it, and I absolutely believe that. He wouldn't disclose the injury to us, but I don't think Dalen is taking himself out of that game under such a big spotlight.
No, of course
Grace,
not.
you mentioned defense. I'm going to go right to defense, too. It's interesting because when a team is leading by 14 with under a minute 50, the first thing you're going to think is choke. I mean, this team melted down, and they did. But the thing I think of is, it's really not surprising given how poorly the defense has been this game and how they've been the last few games. You know, the onside kick was a great onside kick, and given that, I'm honestly not surprised that Boise was able to score 2 touchdowns in that short of a time.
You know, not only was it a great onside kick, it was probably the best onside kick I've ever seen in any level of football. It was a perfectly executed onside kick. And, you know, Grace, I agree with you. You know, you say the defense is to blame. You know, there's no level of football at all where it's acceptable for a team to score 52 points and lose, in my opinion. If you're scoring 52 points, it's on the defense. You know, the offense did their job. They scored 52 points. You should be walking away with a W after your offense puts up 52 points on the board anytime.
And they're not going to admit
it was like an issue, but I don't think you can blame it solely on the defense. They had 2 turnovers. They were playing, you know, they were starting to rush the passer. They were covering, and you know, if you take out the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, they were playing really well.
I mean,
the most important 5 minutes of the game.
But I mean, the offense didn't play the last half.
Blew a 14-point lead.
Who else are you going to blame if your offense scores 52 points, though?
If you take out the last 5 minutes of the game,
into account of like how the whole game went, you know.
Nick, if you take out the last 5 minutes of the game, they still allowed 45 points, so I don't buy that. I don't buy what you're saying.
Nick Stevens had 309 yards. The offense had over 500 yards.
And Boise's had over 600.
You can't say that this wasn't a defensive fail on CSU's end. Sure, CSU's offense could have done things better, but in total, the defense was to blame for this loss.
And I don't think they'll admit it, but I think all of the players got too comfortable. Evan Colorado had a huge sack with under 2 minutes to go. Everyone's getting ready to celebrate. You know, you're naturally going to get a little comfortable. And Boise State, I mean, credit to them. They kept firing blows. They didn't give up, and they somehow came out on top. I mean, I'm honestly still shocked.
Comfortable is the perfect word for it. After that Jared Fogle interception with about 4.5 to go, the defense just looked like they thought it was over.
Exactly.
They weren't ready to come back out and face a strong Boise drive again. And then when the onside kick happened, they were tired from the drive that had just happened. They already were not mentally prepared to handle that. I want to throw a big piece out there, though. If any team was going to do this, it's Boise State. Yeah, CSU broke down defensively. Yeah, you could say that they didn't score enough or move the ball well enough in the second half offensively compared to what they were doing. And there's a lot of things that lost us this football game. But Boise State also won the football game. We talk about not only the onside kick being one of the best onside kicks that we've ever seen, But the way the offense was moving in the second half, the way that Alexander Madison was running the football over 10 yards a carry, and that wasn't the traditional CSU problem of broken tackles like it usually is. He was just running the football really well. You got to give Boise State a lot of the credit for just being able to win this football game.
Kick was legendary.
It took a lot from them.
And a lot of teams would have laid down and just taken the loss, down 14 with a minute 50.
And at halftime, when you're down 25, it's hard to come back onto the field
really
with
is.
any motivation at all, and they scored twice quickly.
I think that goes to show you how well this Boise State team is coached. They I was on the sideline for most of the game, and I was on Boise State's sideline for a good portion of it, and there was not 1 second during the entire game that I got the impression that Boise State thought they were out of it. They were ready to go and ready to come back the entire game, and I was really impressed by that. And I'll tell you, there's a reason that Boise State has never lost to CSU, and I think we saw it this past weekend.
Yeah. Well, you look at the success that Boise State has had over the last 10 or so seasons, and a lot of people say, oh, Chris Peterson is the head coach. Chris Peterson was an amazing head coach for Boise, and Tim, you said it, he was a great recruiter especially. But Brian Harsin was the offensive coordinator when they won all those games, when they beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. He's their head coach now, and he's still the same mind and guy he was with even more experience. So it's not like they lost what Boise State was when Chris Peterson left. They might have lost that bit that he provides, especially with the recruiting aspect, but they still are the offense. They still can do things that Boise State can do. They're still the same team they were 10 years ago in terms of fan base, in terms of talent, and how they play offense. So it's not like they're some normal team that we're playing week in and week out.
And you mentioned Boise State's offense. CSU surrendered a 25-point lead. If they had a 40-point lead, I'm not sure it would have been enough.
2 25-point leads.
That Boise State offense was, just moving the ball at will. I was very impressed with how they were able to stay calm and collected, even being down by so much. Like I said on the side, not 1 second did I get the impression that they thought they were out of the game.
But part of the reason that is because they've never lost to CSU, and you knew they were never going to give up because they know if they can just come back a little bit, they're going to get into CSU's head. I hate to say it, but the second they got that onside kick, everyone in the stadium has a feeling Boise State's going to win. They start thinking they're going to win. I mean, I've never seen such a drastic, quick shift of momentum that late in a ball game. That's one of the craziest games I've ever seen.
It was hard for them to keep it on there. I mean, for me, like those 3 interceptions that got dropped or called back. When that kind of thing happened in the CSU game, CSU almost gave up. They started to lose hope, and they didn't lose hope after all of that. After 3 missed turnovers, and you got to give them a lot of props for that.
And I know Rashad Body had a great game, but I mean, even I'm nervous with Nick Stevens handing him the ball in overtime. I get Dalen is not available, but like you said, they didn't look for Gallup. He had 1 target in the second half. In that situation, inside the 15, you're looking for Michael Gallup or at least someone that's experienced. All credit to Rashad Body, but he's never been in that situation. He's inexperienced. I mean, that's the biggest spotlight he's ever been on. I don't like you handing him the ball there, period.
Poor guy.
Now,
That's not a way you want to end a ball game.
Exactly.
He's drop the ball in the 5.
Too. I think he's the future of CSU's running game, and it's really tough to see a young guy have something like that happen to him, because that's what Boise State's going for. That's what every college football overtime ends on, is a turnover.
Right.
Every once in a while there's a couple missed passes in the end zone late, but I'd say 75% of college football overtimes are ended on turnovers or interceptions. It was going to happen to somebody on one team, and if it's going to damage anybody's psyche, it's going to be the freshman running back.
And with the momentum Boise State had and the swagger of never losing to CSU, I don't like you putting that in the hands of a freshman,
Well, not only that, but you're going against the 8th ranked team in defense for running, and you put it in a freshman's hand to run the ball in overtime within the 15. Why would you? It was an interesting call by Mike Bobo.
Exactly.
You got to give props to Boise State for being able to take Michael Gallup out of the game in the second half. But, if you're Coach Bobo and the Rams and you have arguably the best receiver in the country, one of the best offensive players in the country, in a game like this in overtime, you need to get him the ball. And, the Rams failed to do that, and I think that's a large reason that they lost.
We saw Nevada try and take Michael Gallup out of the game when he had 263 yards and 3 touchdowns. If Nick Stevens wants to put the ball within 3 feet of Michael Gallup, number 4 is going to come down with the football. It's not about whether they're taking them out of the situation.
The play call.
Last week against Wyoming, Bobo said we were trying to get him some looks, but he just wasn't there. He's Michael Gallup. He's there.
Right.
Put the ball in the air and give him an opportunity. At least one time. Between this week and last week, he's had 1 target in the second half of
and Air
football
Force.
games.
It's a deja vu to the Air Force game. He had 100-plus receiving yards and a touchdown in the first half, and then gets nothing in the second half and they lose. You think they would learn there? The same thing happened in the Boise State game for no reason.
I don't know why the game plan is changing when it's
It's
working.
the game plan. It's not the defenders getting on it. Exactly.
So accurate, though.
We're up 25 points. Gallup's working. Dawkins is working pretty well. Let's give it all to Dawkins because they're going to expect Gallup. So we'll just not give it to Gallup ever again.
Let's not give it to the guy who's probably going to go in the first
Hey,
round.
not fine giving it to Dalen. I mean, Dalen's been great. He's
Fine.
rushed for over 100 yards, 6 of his last 7 games, but you got to balance that with Gallup.
Right.
Yeah, well, we saw it
they're
this last
directly
week.
correlated.
He's 185 pounds. He can't run the ball 30 times every single week and stay healthy. Like, that's just asking for something
And
to
if you
happen
don't
again.
lean on him and you throw to the best receiver in the country, Dalen's probably in that game in overtime. They shot themselves in the foot with that.
The game that they were the most efficient in, the Nevada game, I think, is when Gallup had that huge stat explosion. It's because Dawkins was running so well, the safety couldn't be on Gallup, and Gallup was so good that the safety was worried about it. So there was just no way that you could cover them both.
And Dawkins is fresh, too.
Exactly.
Even then, Gallup was making catches over bodies.
Right.
That was just him winning the football.
Exactly.
And that's all it needs to be. And even if they are throwing a safety on Gallup over top, like, he's still going to win the play. You
I'd
can
like to
still
see them
look
hit it until it stops working, because it hasn't stopped working this year.
And they didn't even try to do it. It's not like Boise was triple covering or anything. And like you said, even if they were, he can still make plays.
Yeah, they were shading a safety. I'll give them that. But that shouldn't be enough to stop Michael Gallup.
Now, Brian, I did hear you mention, Michael Gallup. We're speaking of him as he could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Earlier this week, he was listed as a Fred Biletnikoff Award finalist in the NCAA, the award given annually to the best receiver in NCAA Division I football. If he becomes an All-American this year, or even if he wins that award, what is his ceiling as far as the NFL draft and NFL future?
First round, definitely. Receiver's tough in the draft because you have to be something really, really special. You have to be on a national stage every single week for a team to even consider taking you in the top 10.
I'm going to disagree with you there. Corey Davis was on Western Michigan. He went top 5 overall.
That's
if you're
true.
good enough.
Corey Davis also had more receptions than any other human being in.
Absolutely.
Ever.
Gallup leads the NCAA in receiving yards. He has the publicity he needs to go in the first round.
Like Tim said, though, there has to be kind of an asterisk there next to it.
Absolutely.
I mean, some of the guys we've seen go in the top 5 in the last few years, Amari Cooper, who played for Alabama, Kevin White, who played for West Virginia.
Loves getting injured.
Bears fan over here for those who don't know.
Corey Davis, who caught more balls than anybody ever. I mean, you have to have a certain air about you to be in that consideration. But I really like him in that late teens, early 20s range, or when a team who just took right off the bat, first 5 picks comes back around for the start of day 2, something like that. I think that's the perfect range for him.
Right.
A team that is very close to needing a playmaker but doesn't quite have it. The Panthers scout has been there 2 weeks in a row. I think you're excited about that.
There's been a lot of scouts there.
Yeah, a lot of teams that are questionable on offense. I think the Rams are another good place that he could go.
Jaguars.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. The Jaguars with Allen Robinson's ACL injury.
Yeah, but just
Marquise Lee's been pretty good, but they definitely need another guy to complement him, I would say.
all those teams out there where you say, well, they're a decent offense, but maybe they could use one more playmaker, something like that. I think Michael Gallup has written all over him big play receiver. Your end zone threat, your just go high point me a ball, kind of like what's a good example? Anquan Bolden is a great comparison. Torrey Smith, similar, maybe a little less speed than Torrey Smith. Something like that would be a very good angle for him.
Yeah, I won't even say this because I'm a Bears fan. Obviously, they have a list of problems, but the Bears' top wide receiver right now is Dontrell Inman. Trubisky can maybe learn to throw over 200-plus yards per game. Gallup can pan out, but the Bears are another team who would look at a guy like that. The bottom line is there are teams who have receiving problems right now,
And a lot of them
Gallup
are going
can
to be
solve
between 15 and 25,
Exactly.
which is about where he could be.
I think at the end of the day, if we see Michael Gallup put up a respectable numbers at the NFL Combine, we could see his name called on the first day of the NFL draft.
That's a big thing. He's going to have to run a good 40 time. Receivers are always judged on their 40 time, and I don't think it should be that way. You see it all the time. Guys move way too much in the combine because of their way too much in the draft because of their combine outlook. The tape is all there. We know how fast you are on tape. It's different to run a 40 with a bunch of cameras on you. timing you how fast you can run. But he is going to need that, especially coming from a smaller school like CSU.
Now we're going to go from football in Fort Collins to football in the country as a whole. NCAA Division I, we saw a lot of shakeup this week, especially in the top 25. Who do you guys think are winners and losers, and what's the playoff picture going to look like?
I want to talk. Yeah.
Sorry,
anything?
Just think this was a crazy week. 4 top teams losing. Bama scraped by, just barely.
You know, the number 1 team in the country, Georgia, got manhandled.
Yeah, it was
embarrassing.
It was not a pretty week, but also kind of a fun one. The Boise game versus CSU might actually just been a good indication of what it looked like all around the board, because it was just a bunch of upsets. I guess Boise wasn't an upset. It looked like it was going to be at the beginning of the game. It was kind of a crazy week for football. I love it.
I had my mouth watering looking at those games going into Saturday. I mean, you can't plan for 6 of the top 10 teams playing each other. That's incredible. First team I want to talk about is Miami. They're up to number 2 in the AP polls. That turnover chain in Miami, they're just killing it right now. I mean, they beat a good Notre Dame team, and everyone talks about the defense. They're 9th in the FBS in points allowed, which is great, but the offense has been efficient too. That was the first game this season Notre Dame hasn't gotten a turnover. Miami's offense has been very efficient. They have a couple big games left. I mean, their team, they play Clemson at home to end the year. If they can beat Clemson at home, I'm not talking college football playoffs, I think they can be a top 2 seed. They really have what they need in front of them right now.
They're a top 2 seed right now.
Exactly.
When you look at games, the way that the committee judges games played, eye test, resume, all that stuff, right now, they've beaten Notre Dame. They're undefeated. They pass the eye test. Defense wins championships. They're turning the ball over like crazy. And they're popular in the country. You see a lot of times, I think one of the things that hurts a lot of Big Ten schools like Wisconsin right now, who I know we're going to get to, Wisconsin just isn't a popular school. People aren't as excited about watching Wisconsin play. And the whole East Coast bias thing, in a way, is true. It's more so you watch all the games on the East Coast and then the West Coast happens, you've already watched enough football. Wisconsin is a team who's like that. Miami is not. Everybody's excited to watch Miami.
They've always had a national audience.
Yeah, and they're going to get that audience. I see them as ranked number 2 coming tomorrow night.
I see what you're saying. I mean, Wisconsin does have a huge draw in the Midwest. Obviously not as big as Miami. I think their biggest problem is strength of schedule. They beat a number 20 Iowa team. That's going to be their best win. Even if they win the Big Ten championship against Michigan State or Ohio State, it's probably not going to be enough with the resume that teams like Miami or even Auburn coming into the discussion have. There's just too many teams out there for
I would
Wisconsin
absolutely have to agree with you
4.
on that one, Eddie. It's just Wisconsin's just not strong enough. And if you ask me right now, we have Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma, and Clemson, and they're closing out my top 4. Now,
as of right now, but Miami and Clemson are playing each other.
The window is open.
I think when you come to the final poll, Wisconsin finds it because Clemson and Miami have to play each other. I don't see both of them getting it.
You're forgetting Auburn. I mean, it's a big task, but they have Alabama at home to win to end the regular season. It's tough, but if they win that, I mean, they're in the college football playoffs.
That would be quite an impressive resume.
And Alabama should have lost last week to a worse team than Auburn.
You know, we just have a couple weeks to find out. I guess we'll find out who's going to be those 4 teams in the playoffs in just the next couple weeks. Now we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because up next we're going to talk some basketball.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
On Friday, the CSU women's basketball team opened up their season with an 83-69 loss to the Idaho Vandals. The team tipped off their second game of the season about an hour ago in Moby Arena. That's going on right now. In addition, the men's basketball team here at CSU opened up on Friday as well. They were a little bit more successful, wound up getting a W versus Sacramento State. What are your guys' takeaways from the men's game?
Well, the men's game, first and foremost, to me, showed that this is a young, inexperienced team that doesn't quite know how to play with each other. We saw a lot of talent from a lot of different places. Nico Carvacho, 15 boards. J.D. Page and Prentice Nixon, both in the double digits of points. And a lot of different guys contributed in a lot of different ways. I like Deion James' ability to get to the foul line. A lot of different guys were doing different things. Anthony Bonner surprised, grabbing 4 rebounds for himself, which is, I wasn't expecting that. But there's no identity to this team yet.
You know,
it's going to take some time to figure out.
How are you going to replace Mountain West Player of the Year John Clavel? It's going to take some time to find a new identity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Magbo's a big piece.
Yeah,
And every team needs
Especially
a
in
new
a team
identity
that's
to
really
start the
lacking
season.
height.
Well, and we have that young of players too. It's not even just like they lost a couple guys who are going to the NBA or plus a Magbo. It's literally like you've got all young guys. You have a team that hasn't played together for a majority of the time. I was still impressed with the individual efforts of some of the young players, but they just weren't playing cohesively as a team yet. They haven't figured out their rhythm together.
Absolutely.
Now, we know Larry Eustace is a great coach. We all remember Iowa State going to the Final Four, or excuse me, was it the Elite Eight?
It was the Elite Eight.
A couple years ago, you know, when he had Royce White.
2000.
You know, this team is going to be a team that is one of the less talented teams that Eustace has had, one of the less experienced teams that Eustace has had, and I think he's going to have his work cut out for him going forward this season. I think at the end of the year, we're really going to be able to have a good picture of how great of a coach
You're going to
Eustace
see
is.
a lot of improvements. I mean, Shea Bob is someone who stepped up in the exhibition games, really didn't do as well in the first game. He's going to come along. Nico Carvacho will become more of a consistent scorer. He did get the rebounds. That's what we expect. I mean, it takes every team to find their identity unless you have 5 returning senior starters, which is a rare situation. It's going to take this team even longer. They're going to improve as the year goes on. It's just really going to take this team a while to gain the necessary experience and to know how to win when they need to win. If they were to impress me against Sacramento State, they would have pulled away from the start. But with as young of a team, I mean, it's huge they were able to come out with a win. And Sacramento State battled back. They briefly took a lead in the second half. And CSU was still able to win. I mean, that is good. That's good experience they're going to use down the stretch. They were able to battle back despite blowing a double-digit lead.
Yeah. Tim, you said talent level, you mentioned it. I don't want to say I disagree, but I think that remains to be seen.
We are only one game in.
There are a lot of guys on this team that have a lot of different pieces about them that I think are really quality pieces. Eddie, you said you're not too hyped about Deion James, but I like some of the things he provides as like a sixth man.
Absolutely.
He showed great intelligence in getting to the free throw line. I'd like to see him finish a little bit better, but he's a great complementary forward piece in an undersized team.
I agree.
And his ability to just be a big man. He played great on-ball defense as well.
He got a lot of minutes and played well.
Yeah, this is a Sacramento State team that was pretty big on the inside, and Deion James did a great job of defending them and staying out of foul trouble, which is something we saw in both the exhibition games and against Sacramento State.
No, absolutely. I just think it might take Deion a little bit to actually get to the point where he's playable for 20-plus minutes.
Of course.
But when you only have 2 other forwards, if Deion James is showing he can play, he's going to play, period.
Yeah, and that's why I say talent. I think talent-wise we're there. It's the experience piece. It's getting these guys to play together like a patchwork quilt where they're cohesive and working together. When we started to lose that lead towards the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, it was because you had all these guys trying to do something different from each other. You saw Prentice almost trying to act like Gian Clavel. You saw Nico trying to go out there and getting points and forgetting about boards. He wasn't finding himself in good rebounding position.
Right.
And there wasn't anything quality going on. Shea Bob was taking a lot of weird shots, trying to force stuff in. You saw Raekwon was also taking a couple odd shots
He
that I
looked
didn't
way
like.
better in exhibition.
Exactly. And so when you figure out how these guys work together and mesh and do well, their talent is going to come out and show itself.
We're going to start seeing
You
success
see
then.
flashes of it. It's just a question of how much time. And the schedule, I really like the schedule right now because you have a lot of teams coming up that are good and talented, but in the right ways for the CSU team.
Oregon, Arkansas, Florida State.
Well, Florida State I like a lot. They're a young team with not a ton of talent, so you can take advantage of their mistakes and they can gain some confidence.
No
playing.
Jonathan Isaacs or people like that on that Florida State team this year.
Winthrop, a tournament team, so you have to recognize them.
Right.
But you're going to be tested early if you're the CSU Rams.
Right.
The Winthrop game is not easy.
No,
That's an experienced team with their 2 returning scorers back, the 2 leading returning scorers.
So it's a game that these guys know they have to be prepared for, and they're in the right mindset of we still need to get better, but it's still winnable basketball.
Absolutely.
I think Larry Eustace is going to have to show his creativity and ability to kind of put different pieces into a matching puzzle together if the Rams are going to be successful this season.
I think we just keep mentioning inexperience, but the thing is, Prentice and Jeremiah have the necessary experience, and it'll be interesting to see, and it's a key to this team, if they can be facilitators and teach the younger players rather than just try and shine in the spotlight and do everything for themselves. This is a guard-filled team. They're capable of taking these young guards under their wings and teaching them.
I would love to see that
That's
happen.
the route they need to take for this team to succeed.
What Prentice showed us last year, that quiet leadership, playing great defense, doing intelligent basketball decisions, 36 drawn charges last year. This is a crazy number. That's exactly the kind of play, right? That's exactly the kind of guy who leads this team, and I really like, that quiet, silent leader type that gets this team on the right track.
Silence, one word for it. He does talk a lot of trash. I love it. It just shows he's a competitor. He's always on the floor.
He's that guy who, he's not Gian. He's not that flamboyant, outrageous, I'm just going to throw up a three whenever I want it, run around the court, and if you can see it from across the stadium get in a guy's face. He's going to talk trash to other guys, and you see him do it, and he's definitely a confident guy. But it's not something you see outwardly as a fan.
He leads with his play.
Exactly.
He hustles.
Exactly.
That's what this team needs.
Now, guys, we only have a couple minutes left here, but we are speaking about early season basketball, and we're about a month into the NBA season as well. So before we close out the show today, I just want to get all of your opinions. What are your takeaways on the first month of the NBA season so far?
I'm going to go local before anyone says anything about the Nuggets, because the Nuggets, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. They look fine this year. In January, that may all go downhill per usual, but right now I'm like, hey, we're sitting a pretty 8-5. I like it.
Nikola Jokic may be the biggest steal, the biggest value in all of the NBA. He was picked, 36th overall. He's now one of the best big men in the NBA. He's only in his, this is his third year now? He is completely dominating every matchup that he has. I've been really impressed with him, and I would have to agree with you. I think that Denver Nuggets basketball is definitely on the rise.
Looking good right now. I'll take it.
I like the team, too, and the way how it's young with a few veterans. It's in a rebuilding phase. I don't think they need to win basketball games this year. I think they just need to show progress in some of the young guys and improve. This is a team that could be set up to rebuild in a very clean and efficient way, and you could start to see a very quality playoff team 2 to 3 years from now if they start adding the right pieces.
The other team I love right now, and honestly, I just love everything about the Boston Celtics. I've grown up hating Boston teams, but it's hard not to like them, You take a Gordon Hayward injury the first game of the season, absolute morale-crushing thing for a team and a fan base. They respond by going 0-2 and then winning 12 straight games. This team is doing everything. They're averaging the least turnovers in the NBA and the least opponents' points per game. Kyrie's averaging 20-plus points per game, but it's balanced. You have 5 other guys scoring 10-plus a game. I mean, this team is firing on all cylinders, and it's just awesome to see a devastating injury and a huge signing, and they're just responding that perfectly.
Not to mention they might have one of the best coaches in basketball.
Exactly.
They have 10 new guys on a roster of 12, and they're still playing like this. It's quite incredible.
They look like they've been together.
I will say, I think early in the year, especially in the NBA, a lot of people were talking about the Showtime Lakers, but I think they look more like the need some time Lakers, as in they need some time to develop because they're just not there yet. Lonzo Ball, he's going to be a good player, but right now he has the worst shooting percentage of qualified players in the NBA, and when you're not making those shots and you keep throwing them all, it's not a really good look for you or your team.
Magic Johnson this morning said we're going to let him have his shot. We might work on it. That is an attitude, Tim, if the Lakers as an organization have that attitude, we're not quite ready to win now, but we could be ready to win in a year or two. Let's wait for Paul George. Let's wait for LeBron. Let's wait for somebody. They need to fix what they have with their players going on. Get Brandon Ingram back in the weight room. It doesn't matter how he plays this year. He's shown flashes of greatness, but he's still undersized. Lonzo, fix his shot. I don't care if it's in the middle of the season. I don't care if you tank this year, but his shot needs to be fixed before it's permanently damaged.
It's flawed. You can get away in college with that. You can't get away in the NBA. You're seeing it 10 games into the season.
Exactly. If he gets into a rhythm of shooting that shot, that's going to be hard to reverse, especially as a young player.
Yeah, like Sean Marion,
Think of Markelle Fultz.
They need to recognize that all these young guys, they can't just stagnate them. They're ready to bring in new talent. It's the Lakers. They can get whoever they want, barring the right circumstances.
Barring a Luol Deng making $20 million.
I don't think you have anything to worry about with Lonzo, though. Look, his shooting has been awful, but everything else in his game, his rebound, his assist numbers, his steals have been awesome.
For a 20-year-old kid, very, very impressed with the way Lonzo Ball's been playing.
But you don't need to win this year.
Exactly.
Yeah, let him get his numbers, go out and fix it.
Right.
But his shot is terrible. We all know it's been terrible.
You don't need to
He's
win, go to the drawing board, fix it.
Exactly. Because you can, like I said, you can get Paul George, you can get LeBron. They're not coming this year. They're going to come in a year or two. Get them then. Fix everything you have now so you have the right foundation for when they come, you're just ready to go.
Well, I think everything's setting up for it to be quite an exciting NBA season. I can't wait to see the rest of it. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for tonight in our 30-minute segment. We will not have a show next week because of Thanksgiving break, but be sure to tune in the following week for the last Double Trouble show ever. Stay safe and have a wonderful Thanksgiving, Rams.